JMath.
Hi guys, let's try a grade 12 paper 1 exam together. This is the May-June paper of 2023. It is the national paper. So your school might not have finished the syllabus by this time, but just skip to the questions that you can do and let's see how it goes. Enjoy it. Question 1. So you will notice that most of your grade 12 papers are going to start with algebra, and it's normally not very bad algebra. So this one is just a normal trinomial. And then most of the time, the next one would be something where you need to use the formula. Now, this is the clue that tells you use the formula. It's not going to work out without it, and they want to see how you sub into the formula. Okay, so you're going to get used to that. The more papers you practice, you're going to see it in every paper. Let's start with question 1. So, like I said, this is an easy trinomial, grade 9 level. Now, I'm not going to go into all the details of how to do trinomials, but there are videos on the channel, so please just go and check there, and then you can sharpen up on your skills. But I know I'm going to have two brackets, and I also know I'm going to use the factors of the last term. So 1 times 12, 2 times 6, or 3 times 4. Now, this plus tells me I'm going to have to add the factors to give me a 7. So this gives me 13, it's not them. This gives me 8, it's not them. This gives me a 7. So I know I'm going to use these two. Now, I'm going to put an x in each bracket, and then I'm going to put the biggest factor in the first bracket, and then that sign always goes down. So x minus 4, and then the plus tells me it must be the same sign, because remember, minus 4 times minus 3 must give me positive 12 for this trinomial. And they actually asked me to solve, so I need to say, therefore, x is equal to 4, or x is equal to 3. Perfect for that. I will get 3 marks. You will get a mark for the 4, the 3, and then the 2 brackets. So, write down everything. Don't just use a calculator and write the answer. You're not going to get full marks. The next one, like I said, I am going to have to use the quadratic formula. For that, I'm just going to jot down what is my a, b, and c value to just make it easier for myself. So this is not in standard form. So please, first step, I'm going to multiply in the x. So 3x squared plus 5x minus 1 is equal to 0. And there I can see a is 3, b is 5, c is minus 1. Now my formula, x is equal to minus b, okay, plus minus the square root of b squared minus 4a and then c, all over 2a. So 2 times 3 there. And in a grade 12 final, you would get a mark for putting it into simplest form, standard form, then a mark for summing in, and then a mark for your 2 answers. So you do not need to show all the steps in between. If you want to, that's always good. But in this case, they don't care about all the steps in between. This is grade 12. So my answer is going to be minus 1.85, and the other one, or x is equal to 0.18. Perfect. Like I said, the marks you're going to get is for simplest form, subbing into the formula, and then a mark for each. That's your 4 marks. The next one, also a question you'll see in every single math paper in grade 11 and 12. So first step, get this into a trinomial, and then we can figure out the smaller than and bigger than. X squared plus 2x minus 15 is smaller than 0. If I do the trinomial, I know this is going to be an x, and there's an x, and now I need to see what times what gives me 15, but when I subtract them, I get a 2, so I know it's 1 and 15, and 3 and 5. So the biggest one goes in the first bracket, other one goes there, this is a plus, and this is a minus, because the first sign tells me the first bracket needs a plus, and then the last one tells me it must be different signs in the brackets. Okay, so now from here, there are many ways that the teachers teach you guys in grade 11 of how to do this. One is drawing a number line, other one is drawing a parabola, other people just use their calculator. I personally like the parabola format, so I'm going to draw a smiley face, and then I know the answer. If this was a normal trinomial, this would be minus 5, and this would be 3. Okay, and now this sign tells me it's below the line, because smaller than 0, so below the line, and then I know that means x lies between. So x lies between minus 5 and 3, and that's my final answer. So please don't fall in the trap where you just give this sign to the 3 and the 5. You are not going to get your marks if you do that. So please focus and draw the parabola if it helps. If I color in below the line, it means x lies between the values. And if I color above, then it would be or if it was there and there. That is for bigger than 0. But in this case, that was not what they were asking. So the 4 marks, you would get the 4 marks for trinomial, getting your brackets, and then to have the right answer and the right sign. So the last mark would be for not having an including 0 or not having it the wrong way around and all of those things. So that is how you get 4 marks with that question. 1.1.4, a surd question. So also one that you will see in every single paper. Step one with this, I need to get everything that has a square root on the one side and everything that doesn't on the other side. In this case, they were nice, and that's exactly how they gave it to me. Now I'm going to square both sides. Now, if I square the left, this surd is just going to cancel out. And if I square the right, remember, it is a duplicate bracket there. So that bracket squared means I'm going to write it out twice. Now I can just multiply into the bracket, so 2 minus 2x equals x squared minus 1x plus 1. And now I want a trinomial. So x squared is positive on the right. That's why I'm going there. Then minus x gives me minus 2x. But if I look at the left, that minus 2x I'm bringing over, so that becomes a plus 2x. Then there's a plus 1 and a minus 2. So in this case, it would just be x squared. The middle ones cancel out, and then there is a plus 1 minus 2, so that is just minus 1. Therefore, I can split this as difference of squares, so x minus 1, x plus 1, and therefore x is equal to 1, or x is equal to minus 1. Now, many people stop there and just say, okay, I'm done. Please don't. You need to test. Whenever your sum starts with a square root, you must test your answers to see if both are valid. Now, there's certain rules that goes with surds, and the one rule says the answer of a square root can never be negative. So if I sub in minus 1 on the right, that's going to give me a minus 2, and the answer of a square root cannot be minus 2 according to your calculator. So I can just cross that out. After I tested and I saw, okay, this one doesn't work, I can just cross out that equal sign and just indicate that I'm choosing the left. Now, please test both sides, and sometimes both of them are fine, sometimes none of them are fine. You need to make sure. Don't just test the one and then leave the other one. Okay, so if I test if positive 1 can work, this would be 2 times 1 minus 1 in a square root. That gives me 0 because it's 2 times 0. And then on the other side, 1 minus 1 is 0. So yes, if x is 1, the two sides are equal to each other. Okay, let's just check where you would get your marks. You would get your marks for definitely taking everything over and multiplying in. So for this step, I'm going to get a mark. Then for factorizing, I'm going to get a mark there. Then for getting two answers and for canceling the correct answer. So the testing, they don't mark you for seeing the test. They mark you for choosing the right answer. Okay, so don't forget that part. Next up is simultaneous equations, also something they love in all papers. You're going to get simultaneous equations. If it's not in the algebra section, I can promise you it's going to be somewhere else, like in sequence and series, or maybe in calculus. So make sure you are 100% with simultaneous equations. Okay, what I'm going to do first is those exponents. I don't like it if x and y is in the exponents in the one equation, but not in the other one. So the first step I'm going to do is I'm going to say this is 3x plus y equals 3 to the power 3. If the bases are the same, you can drop them. So therefore, x plus y is equal to 3. I want something alone, so I'm just going to say this is x is equal to 3 minus y. That is now equation 1. Equation 2 is fine like it is just written there, so I'm not going to change anything, just going to leave it like that. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is going to sub equation 1 into equation 2. So I'm going for substitution method and not elimination. How do I know when it would work? Elimination doesn't work if something is squared. If a certain x is squared and another one is not, then you won't be able to eliminate all the x's in one step. So that's why I'm doing substitution. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to sub x in. So I'm just going to make my bracket squared plus y squared equals 17. And I said x was 3 minus y. Now I can just FOIL that out and just get the answer. So 9 minus 3y plus y squared must be equal to 17. I can see this is going to be a trinomial. I want everything on the left. So y squared plus y squared is 2y squared minus 6y, and then 9 minus 17 gives me an 8, and it's going to be negative. Now I can just divide everything by 2, or you can do a trinomial in any way you want, but I like it in simplest form. So there we go, because now I can see this is y minus 4, this is y plus 1 equals 0, and therefore y is going to be equal to 4, or y is going to be equal to minus 1. Now, it solves simultaneously, so I need to now find x as well. Now, in this case, it's extremely easy because I'm just looking at that formula, and I know x is just 3 minus y. So in something as easy as this, you don't need to rewrite everything, but if it's a little bit more tricky, just show them how you subbed in. So in this case, I'm just going to say x is equal to 3 minus 4, or x is equal to 3 minus 1. Therefore, this x would just be minus 1, and this x would be 4. Okay, Perfect. Make sure when you're doing this sum that it's clear which x goes with which y. Now, I put an or there and I left a space. So I think it's pretty clear. But some teachers want their students to say, okay, so if I write this in coordinate form, if x is -1, y is 4, or when x is 4, y is -1. Just hear from your teacher what she prefers. In the final, if it's clear which x goes with which y, you will get your marks. Now, you need to get used to the fact that in every paper, the last question in the algebra section is always going to be something way out that's not in your textbook or that you have in practice or something. It's called a level 4 question, which means it wasn't homework, it wasn't discussed in class, but you know everything you need to know, all the pieces you know. You must just figure out how to put the pieces together. Now, with something like this, I would, even though they say don't use your calculator, I would just type in the first one in my calculator just to see what's happening, because I can't really see what type of math this is. It's not an equation, it's not factorization. I don't know. So I'm just going to type in what is 1 over √1 plus √2. Okay. My calculator tells me that is going to be √2 minus √1. Okay. The next one, if I type that in, it's going to be √3 minus √2. Okay, I'm starting to spot a pattern. If I type in the next one, it's going to be √4 minus √3. Okay, great. Just to show you the separations between them. Okay, so why am I cheating? Why am I using my calculator when they're telling me not to? Remember, when you see that sentence, it means don't make everything decimals. So you can use your calculator, but just don't go and make everything decimals, because then they can clearly see no human could have done that. Okay, now in this one, I'm also just going to type in the very last term that they give me into my calculator, and I can then see that one is going to be √100 minus √99. Okay, perfect. So now this is forming a pattern, and I can see, okay, the √2 cancels the √2, the √3 cancels the √3. Everything is canceling except the -1 doesn't have a friend, and then the -99 will cancel, but the 100 won't have a buddy. So the final answer to this question would be -1 plus 10, which is 9. Okay, so it doesn't fit into any math box that you've learned. You must just try and figure out on the day what are they actually looking for. But in this case, the answer is just 9. Question 2 is a little bit of sequence and series. Given the geometric series, is this convergent or not? Okay, so your theory says something converges if R lies between -1 and 1. So I just need to figure out what's R and just see, is it 0 comma something or not? And then I know if it converges. R is always equal to term 2, which is 1 over 15, divided by term 1, which is 1 over 5. If I now divide that, I'm going to tip in times, and this is 1 over 15 times 5 over 1, and that is equal to a third. A third is 0, 0.33, and therefore I can just tell them 0, 0.33 lies between -1 and 1, therefore converges. Okay, so whenever you get a question like this, that is what they want. Just get R, sub it into that little formula to see if it's true, and then you just write it converges. Calculate the sum to infinity of the series. Okay, so probably one of the easiest sequence and series sums you're going to get. I am just going to use the formula S infinity is equal to A over 1 minus R. I can see that A is 1 over 5. We just worked out that R is 1 over 3. So I can just sub it in, type it in my calculator, and then just see what the answer is. So a fifth over 1 minus a third. My calculator tells me 3 over 10. There we go. That's probably the easiest 2 marks you're going to get in a grade 12 final. An arithmetic and a geometric sequence are combined to form a pattern. Now, if I see that, I'm immediately thinking color coding, or in any way, if your school tells you you're not allowed to use colors or highlighters, then find a way. Do squiggle lines or underline or circle or whatever you need to do to help your brain separate these patterns. So I know the green one, I'm going to just do all the X's, and then with another color, just going to say, okay, so a third, a 9, a 27. From this, I can see the geometric is going to be the fraction one, and the arithmetic is going to be the other one. So now my brain knows which formulas am I allowed to use. Now, if I look at the green one, it's just going to be x plus x gives me 2x, plus x gives me 3x. So the next term is going to be 4x, semicolon. Now with the blue one, I can see I'm multiplying the bottom by 3 every time. So 3 times 3 is 9, 9 times 3 is 27, 27 times 3 is 81, but I need to write it as 1 over 81. Perfect. There I get 2 marks. Determine the general term for the odd terms of this pattern. Write down your answer in terms of x. So with odd, it doesn't mean 1 over 3 is an odd number. It just means the ones in the odd positions. So x, 2x, 3x. And like I said, that's arithmetic. So the straight up answer, I can just see the first one is 1x, the second one is 2x, and then 3x. So the answer is just n times x. Now, sometimes in a paper, you get an easy question like this and it will feel too easy. So I just checked the memo, and the memo says if you just write the right answer, you're going to get full marks. So remember, I could have gone for Tn equals a plus n minus 1 d. And in this case, the first term is x plus n minus 1, and the constant value that I'm adding is also x. So then it's x plus x times n minus x, and therefore the answer is just n times x. So if you want to write it out in full, that's what you would write, but you can also just write down the answer. So many times, if a question is just as obvious as this one, they don't care about your working out, you will get full marks. Question 2.2.3, calculate the value of P26. Okay, so the 26th term, in the previous question, we worked with all the odd positioned terms, so T1, T3, T5. Okay, now, if they're asking me for P26, I'm going to work with all the even number terms, and I know this sequence is going to be 1 over 3, 1 over 9, 1 over 27. And they are asking me for the 26th term. Now, just be awake here. Trick question. It's 26 in the combined pattern, but in effect is actually 13 plus 13. So 13 of the arithmetic and 13 of the geometric. So I am interested in T13. Now, if I write my little list, A is going to be equal to a third, or I can see I'm also just multiplying by a third, and then N is going to be 13. Watch out for that one. It can be really tricky. Now I'm just going to use the Tn formula, sub n, and then get my answer. So I know Tn is equal to A times R to the power n minus 1. I do not know a human that can do that straight away, so I'm going to use my calculator. The answer, according to my calculator, which I would really assume was wrong, but we've built a bond, and I trust it. So 1 over 1594323 is the answer. Guys, don't trust your intuition with something like that. If it gets to exponents, your answer is going to be extremely big or extremely small. Where am I getting my 3 marks? Are you getting your 3 marks for correctly identifying that it's the 13th term, for getting your Tn formula, and then for getting your answer? Now for the 6-mark question. So like you used to with government papers, a few easy ones, and then the last one hits you like a truck. Let's figure this out. If sigma goes until the 21st term, and it is Pn, so I know it's that combined sequence up there, determine the value of x. Okay, now very important. If they tell me the bottom number in sigma is 1 and the top number is 21, number of terms is going to be 21 minus 1 plus 1, which is going to be 21. Okay, because there was a 1 at the bottom, it didn't change, but always just test it. So now it's 21 terms. So I now need to figure out, is it 10.5 plus 10.5? It can't be because n must be an integer. So it's actually going to be S11 with the odd ones. Just because it's first, it gets an extra one, plus S10 of the geometric. So I'm going to do 2 SN formulas, both with their own A value and D value or R value. I'm going to add them together, and then it's going to equal 33.5. And that's how I'm going to figure out what x is. So this is going to be a long sum, but let's go. What I would do first is I will definitely, again, write my patterns separate from each other. So my arithmetic, my AS, is going to be equal to x plus 2x plus 3x all the way till the 11th term. And we figured out that this would just be 11x. So my A would just equal to x, my D would equal to x, and then n would equal to 11. If I go over to the geometric series, that's going to be a third, a ninth, a 27th. Okay, I need to put pluses in between. And then there I can say that, okay, so A is equal to 1 over 3, R is equal to 1 over 3, and N is equal to 10. Okay, so just to repeat again, why is the one n 11 and the other n 10? Because I need to get to 21. So 11 plus 10 gives me 21. Why does it go with the green one? Because it started with that. So all the odd positions was green, and therefore term 21 would also be green because it's odd. Okay, now I just need to get the correct formulas, sub in, and then equal it to 33.5. So arithmetic Sn would be n over 2, so I'm going to go 11 over 2, 2a, so I'm just going to put my x there, plus n minus 1, and then my d value was just an x, okay, and then plus, then I'm going to go geometric, a was a third, r to the power n minus 1 over r minus 1 is equal to 33.5. So can you see why this is a 6-mark question? It's getting a bit hectic, but I just need to do it step by step, and then it will work out. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to simplify this green bracket first, and then I'm going to keep the 11 over 2 there, but in the bracket it would be a 2x plus 10x. So that's just going to give me 12x. Now, in this one, I am just going to do a calculator calculation because there's no variables and I don't want to work with all those fractions. So if you've subbed incorrectly, you do not need to show all the other steps. You can just type it in the calculator. And the calculator actually tells me this is 0.5. So wonderful. That is so much easier to write than that whole fraction. Okay, now I can just simplify this equation. So if I take the 12 and I divide it by 2, it's going to give me 6. So this is 66x. And then if I take that plus a half to the other side, that just becomes 33. And therefore, x is a half, and that is what the question asked me. Wow, that was a mouthful. So let's just see, where am I going to get my marks? You would get your marks for getting the S11 plus S10, then for subbing in the correct arithmetic sequence, for subbing in the correct geometric sequence, and then for getting the answer, and for simplifying all the algebra things and everything. So there you would get another mark. 6 marks for that question. Question 3. So even though it's in a grade 12 paper, this is a grade 11 sum with a constant second difference, quadratic sequences. So don't forget to study that part, please. In every grade 12 paper, they're going to throw this in somewhere to catch out the people that forgot about all of this. So let's read what's going on. A quadratic sequence has the following properties. The second difference is 10. The first two terms are equal to each other. And then T1 plus T2 plus T3 equals 28. So I'm just going to do a little setup here. I don't know what term 1, 2, and 3 would be. I also don't know what the difference between them would be, but I know this is going to be 10. Now, I'm going to put in x's because they tell me these are the same. So if the first two terms are the same, then this would be a 0, and then 0 plus 10 would be 10. And then this would be x plus 10. So it feels like they gave me way too little info, but I could actually build a whole algebraic thing, and I can now equate that to 28 and then solve for x. So what I'm going to say is x plus x plus x plus 10 is equal to 28. Therefore, 3x is equal to 18, and therefore x is equal to 6. But now, that was not the question. The question was to get the general term. But in order to get that, a, b, and c, and all those values, I needed to get x. Now I can rewrite the actual pattern and then solve the question. So 6, 6, and then 10 plus 6. And then this is a 0, this is a 10, and then that is a 10. Now I can start to figure out what is Tn equals an squared plus bn plus c. Now I know there are many different methods that the schools employ. I'm going to stick to the one that's in the textbook. So we are going to write all the values on the left. I didn't give myself enough space, so I'm just going to do that. And now I know this is going to be a plus b plus c is equal to the top value, 3a plus b is equal to the middle one, and then 2a is equal to the bottom one. I'm going to start from the bottom and just say, okay, I know that 2a is equal to 10, and therefore a is equal to 5. Okay, I have a. Now to get b, I can say 3 times a, which I know is 5, plus b must equal 0, and therefore b is equal to 0 minus 15, which is minus 15. And then the c value would be 5 minus 15 plus c must equal 6. Now, 5 minus 15 gives me minus 10. I'm going to move it over, and then 6 plus 10 gives me 16. And therefore, I can confirm that the answer is correct because I found that a is 5, b was minus 15, and c was 16. Great, 6 marks for that. Okay, so my marks I get if I built out this whole system correctly, then if I added them to get 28, if I got the 6, and then for solving A, B, and C. So remember, I'm not getting a mark for my answer because they said prove that the answer is this, so they gave it to you already. Question 3.2, is 216 a term in the sequence? Justify your answer with the necessary calculations. Okay, guys, now once again, a few ways to get there. You will get some of those people who would just go and add random numbers to see if 216 is one of the numbers. Okay, I can't stop you. It's not what they want, but they'll have to give you your marks. The proper way to do this is to write down the formula, 5n squared minus 15n plus 16, and then say it's equal to 216. Now I can bring this over, and 5n squared minus 15n, 16 minus 216 gives me minus 200, and now I have a trinomial. If this trinomial can solve nicely, and I have two integer values for n, then it is part of the sequence. If I end up with a decimal, it's definitely not part of the sequence. So let's see where this goes. So if I divide all sides by 5, this is going to be n squared minus 3n minus 40 equals to 0. And the factors of 40, 1 and 40, 2 and 20, 4 and 10, and then 5 and 8. I'm looking for a pair that if I minus them, I get 3. So it looks like 216 is actually part of this. Just going to say this is n minus 8, and then n plus 5 equals to 0. So therefore, the 8th term in this sequence is actually going to be 216. Why is it not the fifth one? Because this tells me n is equal to minus 5. N can never be negative or decimal. So in this specific case, n is equal to 8, and then I must just answer the equation. Therefore, 216 is the 8th term. Okay, so just to repeat, if I got a decimal there, then I would say, no, it's not part of the sequence. Question 4, given the function px equals a third to the power x, so immediately I know that is an exponential function. If I read through the questions, I can see they're not asking me to sketch it, but I'm anyway gonna sketch it just for myself. So the best and the quickest way to sketch exponential is to just do a quick table method. So always just minus 1, 0, and 1, and then you can just type it in the calculator, or let's do a quick mental math. What is a third to the power minus 1? That will be a 3. A third to the power 0 would be 1, and a third to the power 1 stays the same. Okay, so now if I just draw a little sketch for myself, there the asymptote would be 0, and then at minus 1 it would be 3, at 0 it would be 1, and then at 1 it would be a third. So this little sketch goes like this. Sorry for the wobble. Question 4.1.1. Is p an increasing or a decreasing function? So with my little sketch, I can definitely see from left to right, this is decreasing. You can also see in the y values in my table method, right there, the values are getting less and less. Okay, so definitely decreasing. Determine the inverse of p in that form. So this is from chapter 2, and if I write this normally as y equals to 1 over 3 to the power x, with the inverse, x and y would swap, so that would be x is equal to 1 over 3 to the power y, and then it becomes a log sum. So I put in a log, the base stays the base, and the other two swap around. Now they said leave it in the form of y equals. Always just check if they didn't say leave it in the form of p to the power minus 1, because you will lose a mark if that is not correct. Write down the domain of p minus 1. So if you remember from log functions, I can just take my little sketch and then just switch all the coordinates that I got. So if the first coordinate was minus 1 and 3, it would now be at 3 and minus 1. The middle coordinate was 0 and 1. This becomes 1 and 0. And then the other coordinate would be a third and 1. So my graph would look like this. And I can clearly see the domain only starts when x is bigger than 0. So my answer to this question would be x is greater, but not including to 0, and x is an element of real numbers. Question 4, write down the equation of the asymptote of px minus 5. So at this stage, the asymptote is y equals to 0. If they add a negative 5, it just means everything shifts down 5 units. The answer would then just be y is equal to minus 5. Don't let them trick you. The answer is just y equals minus 5. Question 4.2 is now not an exponential anymore. This is now a hyperbola. I know that because the x is in the denominator of that fraction. Write down the equation of the asymptotes. So just a little bit of theory recap. The standard form for a hyperbola would always be y is equal to a over x plus p plus q. And my asymptotes would be x is equal to minus p, y is equal to q. So if I answer question 4.2.1, in this case, x would be equal to positive 1 and y would be equal to 2. No calculation needed. You get 1 mark for each of those. Question 2, calculate the x-intercept of f. I get an x-intercept by making y equals to 0. So I can then just rewrite as if y equals 0, 4 over x minus 1 plus 2. Okay, now we're just going to do a little bit of algebra. So minus 2 is equal to 4 over x minus 1. Therefore, I can multiply the x minus 1 over to get rid of the fraction. So then minus 2 times x minus 1 is equal to 4, I can multiply that in. Minus 2x plus 2 is equal to 4, and therefore minus 2x is equal to positive 2, and therefore x would be equal to negative 1. So to answer that question, the x-intercept would be minus 1 and 0. Question 4.2.3, sketch the graph of f, label all asymptotes, and indicate the intercepts with the axes. So we can use the info we already got. We know that the asymptotes will be when x is equal to positive 1, so I can make an asymptote there, and then when y is equal to positive 2. So there we go. And I can put in my x-intercept as minus 1. Perfect. And now I can check the a value of this graph. And the a value of this graph is a positive 4. So I know my graph is going to be in quadrant 1 and quadrant 3. But I only have 1 dot and 2 asymptotes, so that's not good enough. So I'm just going to do a quick table method to just figure out where other dots would be. So in this case, I'm just going to say, I'm going to make x, let's go for minus 1, 0. We know the asymptote is at positive 1, and then at 2 and 3, I'm going to sub in dots. So now I'm just going to type that on my calculator. You can use the table method, or you can just type it in manually to see what the answers would be. According to my calculator, my table method would look like that. Now I can just go and put in all the dots and connect it. So I can also see that at 1, I have my asymptote. So at 2, the y value is 6, and at 3, the y value is 4. So now remember, with a hyperbola, I start close to the asymptotes, but I can never cross them. So the one would be there, and then the other one would just connect through those dots. Perfect. This is called the F graph, so just make sure you put an F next to both of the arms, and then you will get your 4 marks. So let's just check where would they give you your marks. You'll get a mark for asymptote. So I actually forgot something, so I would lose a mark because I didn't say y is equal to 2 and x is equal to 1. Okay, guys, so they are going to be very strict on this. And also, you must label at least a dot on both arms of the thing. So I know this one was 3 and 4, so I'm just going to label that one. That was minus 1, and that was minus 2. So put more info on the sketch than you think is necessary so that they can't take marks from you. So how would I get my 4 marks? I'd get a mark for asymptotes. Okay, so I'll get 1 mark. Then I'll get a mark for the right-hand arm being correct, and then for my intercepts, and then for the general shape of the graph. So 4 marks for that question. Question 4.2.4, use your graph to determine the values of x for which that inequality right there. Now, that doesn't look nice. It's not the same as my graph. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite that so that it looks like the fx graph that they gave me. So I can see in the fx graph, there is a plus 2 at the end and everything's on the same side. So I'm just going to rewrite it as 4 over x minus 1 plus 2 greater or equal to. The question is, where is this hyperbola above the line? And I'm just going to take my highlighter to show you guys. So if I go from left to right, I am looking for x-intercepts or asymptotes. Now, I know this piece has the parabola above the line until minus 1. Okay, and then the entire right-hand side past this asymptote is also above the line. So therefore, to write the answer, I can say this graph is greater or equal to 0 when x is smaller or equal to minus 1, or when x is greater than positive 1. Now, you'll notice I included the minus 1 because the question included 0, but I never include an asymptote. You will lose your marks if you have a line with the asymptote. So let's see, where would you get your 2 marks? Basically, just for both of your answers, 1 mark. Question 4.2.5, determine the equation of the axis of symmetry if f moved 2 units to the right and has a negative gradient. Okay, so there's a few things going on in that question. What I would normally do with this is I would first get the axis of symmetry before anything moved. Okay, because otherwise it's just going to be very democratic and we don't like that. So the axis of symmetry, remember, it's a line that goes through the cross and through your hyperbola. So if I draw it, it would be there. Okay, that's the one with a positive gradient, and that would be y is positive 1x plus c, but that is not what they asked me. They asked me for one that goes the other direction. So I'm just going to take away my table method, the other direction, which means it goes there somewhere. Please just take your ruler so it doesn't look like mine. But this equation would be y is equal to minus 1x plus c. And now very easy, I am just going to sub in the cross of the asymptotes. And I know that coordinate was 1 and 2. I sub that into x and y, and that is how I find c. So y is equal to minus 1x plus c. I can rewrite this as 2 is equal to minus 1 times 1 plus c, and therefore this C value would be 3. So to answer their question, the axis of symmetry with a negative gradient is equal to y equals minus 1x plus 3. Now watch out. This is the original before it moved. So therefore, I must now move this 2 units to the right. And then I can just see where the y-intercept was 3, the y-intercept is now just going to be 5. Because the gradient is minus 1, everything just moves 2 units to the right, or you can see this line moves 2 units up. So y is equal to minus 1x plus 5 would be the correct answer in this case. So just to show you exactly what happened, I took this axis of symmetry, okay, but we moved it 2 units to the right. So if I let it go through 5 instead of 3, then the y value would also go up to 5 instead of 3. And that's why that would be the answer. Question 5. So now we have a parabola and a straight line. Now the first thing I would do, I haven't even read the questions, but I would immediately go and just highlight the things that go together. So this equation goes with this parabola, and then I'll take another color. So let's just make this, let's say green, and the straight line would go with the GX formula. So remember, math is a marathon. So if you write your exam, you want to preserve your brain power for the whole 3 hours, that you don't lose easy marks at the end. Something small like this will help you to immediately see, oh, this is a question about the purple one or the green one, where if you don't use colors, then you need to think the whole time, and there's a big chance that you would sub into the wrong formula and all of those things. So if you're allowed to, please use colors to just make your life easier. Question 5.1, write down the coordinates of the turning point of F for 2 marks. So remember, there are a few possibilities for the equation of a parabola. This specific one, the purple equation that I highlighted, is written in the turning point format. So in the turning point format, y is equal to ax plus p squared plus q, and the turning point would just be minus p and q. So to answer the question for 5.1, I can say the turning point of this graph would be at negative 3 and 4. And I get a mark for each one of the coordinates. Write down the range of f. Now I can see it's a sad parabola, and I know that the turning point, which would be located there, would be at minus 3 and 4. So remember, the range tells me read from the bottom to the top. How far does this graph go up? And it does not go past 4. So the answer would be y is smaller or equal to 4. Question 5.3, show that the x coordinates of A and B are minus 5 and minus 2 respectively. Now, it's not the x-intercepts, so I can't just take the graph and make it equal to 0, but it is the point of intersection. So if I ask you, on which graph does B lie? You can tell me it lies on the purple one and the green one. So I'm just going to take the 2 equations and make them equal to each other. So now I can FOIL out, and the goal is to get a trinomial because there's 2 possible answers. How I would do this is to first FOIL and then multiply in the minus. So I know this is going to be x squared plus 3x gives me 6x plus 9. And then I can take over the equation on the right. I can bring it to the left. So plus 4 minus 5 gives me minus 1. And then minus x equals to 0. Now I can multiply in the minus, and this gives me minus x squared minus 6x minus 9 minus 1 minus x equals to 0. I don't like it on this side because there's a negative x squared, so I'm just going to flip everything and say, if I take everything to the right, it's x squared. That's going to be minus 6x minus 1x gives me minus 7. Take it over, it becomes plus 7x. And then a minus 9 minus 1 gives me minus 10, but I take it to the other side, and that's plus 10. So therefore, the next step would be to get the brackets, x, and luckily this is an easy one, so the only factors of 10 would be 5 and 2, because if I add them, it gives me a 7. 1 times 10 would not work, it's going to give me a 11, so I'm not interested in that one. And perfect, there I just proved that x is equal to minus 5, or that x is equal to minus 2, just like they asked me. So the 4 marks in this question you'll get for putting them equal to each other, getting your trinomial, and then because they gave you the answers, they're actually not going to give you a mark for the answers. So for the brackets and the simplification, you're going to get your other marks. Question 5.4. So now they're getting into the level 3, level 4 questions where they're trying to trick you. Hence, determine the value of C for which this equation, now if you look nicely, it's exactly the equation that we used up there when we started question 5.3, but next to every x, they put a plus C. Now, if you see this, it means they took the graphs and they shifted it a little bit to the right or to the left. If the value that they added is inside a bracket, it means right and left. But if it is on the very end of the sum, then it was shifted up and down. Now, let's interpret this question. Hence, determine the value of c for which these equations will have one negative and one positive root. Now, please don't assume that a root means an x-intercept. A root just means the answer to an equation. Now, the roots that we got previously was -5 and -2. So if I look at this graph, I wanted to move 2 units to the right, okay, because b is now at -2. So if that moves 2 units to the right, then it would be positive. But a is at -5, so it's not allowed to move more than 5 units to the other side. So the answer to this question is c must lie between 2 and 5. But now I must think clearly, because if I say c is +2, it's moving to the left. And I don't want that. So I need to say it's between -5 and -2. And that would give me my 2 marks. 5.5, the maximum distance between F and G in the interval between A and B is K. If hx equals gx plus k, determine the equation of hx in the form. Wow, that they are trying to make extremely complicated. So let's just take this slowly and figure out what they want. So there's a piece of work in the functions chapter for grade 11 where they teach you how to work out the maximum or the minimum distance. And all that you need to know is that I always take the top graph minus the bottom graph, and I get a new trinomial or a new equation. Now they're telling me the distance between these graphs is equal to k, so therefore I can say k will be equal to the top graph between A and B. The top graph would be the purple one. So I'm going to say minus x plus 3 squared plus 4. That's the top graph, and then I need to minus the bottom graph for that section, which would be x plus 5. And that will be equal to k. So now I am just going to simplify this, and you would notice it's exactly the same sum as we did in 5.3, because we also then moved over and we subtracted the x plus 5. So I can basically just copy the steps I did in 5.3, and eventually my trinomial would be x squared plus 7x plus 10 again. But let's just do that properly. There we go. So that's the equation for the distance between the two graphs between A and B. But now to get the maximum, I must get the turning point of that equation that I just written down there. Okay, so you can do completing the square. That's 100% valid. Or you can use x is equal to minus b over 2a. So I like that one more. So I'm going to say x is equal to minus 7 over 2a, which is just minus 1. And that would just tell me the answer is negative 7 over 2. So I can write it as 3.5 or 7 over 2, doesn't matter. Now the answer to this question, I'm still 2 steps away. This is the x value of that point where the maximum is, but this isn't the maximum. The maximum I get if I sub this into the k expression that we got. So minus 7 over 2, which was negative, squared, minus 7 times 7 over 2, which is still negative, and then minus 10. So therefore the maximum value would be, so I'm just going to write the max of k would be equal to 9 over 4, or it would be 2.25. Okay, so let's finish this question. They want us to write what hx is. And hx is if I take gx, which is my green function, and I just add the maximum value of k to it. So very easy. The answer would be hx equals x plus 5 plus 2.25, which would then just simplify to x plus 7.25 as the final answer. So let's see where you would get your 5 marks there. So firstly, for knowing top graph minus bottom graph, then for getting your trinomial, for getting the correct x value, the correct y value, and then for answering their question. So 5 marks. That was a level 4 difficulty question. So you're not going to get the specific one again, but it's going to be on this level. So make sure you are prepared for this. Question 6, now we get to finances. So if you forgot finances, please just go back. There's a whole playlist on finances on the JMath RSA YouTube channel. Go and check them, and then you'll be fine to answer these questions. This is not a very tricky one, but let's start. A company bought a photocopier for $150,000 on the 1st of July 2022. They will use the old photocopier as a trade-in when they replace it with a similar new photocopier in 5 years' time on 30 June 2027. Okay, that's a mouthful, but they're trying to tell you that you are doing sinking fund. And sinking fund has 4 steps that are always the same. Okay, luckily in this case, they guide you through the 4 steps, So even if you didn't study sinking funds, you will still be able to get full marks for this question. Question 1. The average rate of inflation over the next 5 years will be 6.5%. Determine the price of a similar new photocopier in 5 years' time. Now, the key word in that sentence is inflation. Okay? And if you see the word inflation, then you know it's going to be compound interest. Inflation can't be simple interest because the whole purpose of inflation is making it more expensive than it was last year. You are just going to use A is equal to P 1 plus I to the power N. Now, in this case, we are working out A. What is it going to be after we added interest? We know it's starting at 150,000 and it is 1 plus 0.065. Now, I know many people like doing the percentage. You are welcome to. My brain just works in decimals. Sorry about that. But you can work in percentages. Just don't make a mistake. And then it is to the power n, which is 5 years. Now, I'm not dividing by 12. I'm not multiplying by 12. Inflation is normally per annum. So I don't need to divide or multiply the years. Now, I just type that in my calculator. And my calculator tells me this new photocopier in 5 years' time is going to be 205,512,9999. So I'm just going to round it off to 513. Okay, question 2. Calculate the trade-in value of the old photocopier after 5 years if it depreciates at 9% per annum. Now, extremely important. If you miss this, everything will be wrong. Straight line basis. Okay, so now I'm using simple interest. It is on your formula sheet, and I know many of you used this last time in grade 9, but always read very carefully. Okay, so simple interest, the n is on the inside, and the I is now subtracted from the 1. So it's not 1 plus, 1 minus in. Now, I am still looking for the price after 5 years, and my starting price is the same, 150,000. Okay, 1 minus 0.09 times 5. I can just type that in the calculator, and my calculator tells me this is 82,500. Okay, so both of those questions, 2 marks. One for subbing in, one for the answer, one for subbing in, one for the answer. So fairly easy, even if you did not have a clue what sinking fund is or that this was sinking fund. So now question 3 is a little bit more tricky, but it's not a level 4 question. If you did your homework in class, you will 100% get this. Okay, the company sets up a sinking fund to cover the replacement cost of this photocopier. So what's happening is they want to plan ahead. It's now 2022, and they want to, in 5 years' time, buy a new one, sell the old one, but they want to start preparing now. So they want to put money away each month into a savings account. And this sum is about figuring out how much must they put away. Okay, the fund earns interest. Okay, the company made its first monthly deposit the 31st of July. Okay, now the story started on the 1st of July. So if they do it at the end of the first month, perfect. I don't need to consider anything with that. And we'll continue to do so until the 31st of May. Now that's a very important date. 1 month prior to the new photocopier being bought. Okay, keep that in mind. It's going to make a massive difference if your sum is correct or not in the end. How much should they have deposited at the end of each month so that the company will be able to buy this new photocopier? Okay, so deposit and savings, that tells me it is future value. Now I first need to figure out how much must they save. Now I know a new one is going to cost 205,000 and the old one they'll be able to sell at 82,000. So that is my first step, is to figure out how much must they save. So I'm just going to say this is save is equal to 205,513 minus 82,500. So that amount is extremely important because that's going to be my future value in the next formula. So this answer is 123,013 Rand. So now if I make my little list, future value, I know it's this amount, so 123013. The I, they tell me 7.85%. But like I said, I like to write this in decimals, so I'm going to say it's 0.0785, and this interest rate is monthly, so I'm going to divide by 12. Now, if you have a keen eye, this is not from July to July. Okay, so there's my big problem. I need to figure out how many months this is. So if it was from 31 July till 30 June, it would have been exactly 5 years or 60 months. But this is actually 1 month less because it only goes until May. And then what's important is they're telling you at that point, they're not going to buy the photocopier. They're going to buy it 1 month later. So I need to add another interest. So this is where the advanced part comes in. But anyway, so we said N is 59 months. And then there's a plus 1 that I'm going to show you where we're going to fit that in. So the future value formula, bracket, 1 plus I to the power N minus 1. And then all over I. Now if I fill in, I can say 123013 is equal to, the X is what I want to work out. So I'm just going to leave X there. And then I'm going to say this is bracket 1 plus, and then I need to write that whole fraction, 0.0785 over 12 to the power. We worked out n was going to be 59 minus 1, close the block bracket, all over that fraction again. So 0.0785 over 12. Now that we sub in everything, we need to read carefully because this is where the catch come in. Okay, so if they saved an entire 5 years, then the sum would be perfect. But they didn't. They stopped 1 month earlier, but they didn't take out the money out of the bank. So the money is still in the bank for that 1 month. And if that happens, I need to add a separate interest bracket. So that's what this little one is for. And that's going to be the key to if you have this one right or not. I can tell you many people would have missed this bracket and then their answer would be wrong. Okay, so the final answer is if I just say 123,013 divided by that entire fraction, okay, then the answer is 1,704 Rand and 1 cent. Okay, so let's just go over this. Why is that extra bracket there? Because they left their money in the bank for 1 month. So if the money is not out of the bank, it must earn interest either as a loan or as a savings. And that's what that one extra bracket is for. 6.2, today, Andrew borrowed 200,000 from the bank. The bank charges interest at that amount. Andrew will make repayments of 6,000 at the end of every 3 months. Okay, so that's code word for quarterly. His first repayment will be made in 3 months. Okay, so that's normal. There's no gap. He hasn't missed a payment, and the bank is not angry at him. How long in years will it take Andrew to settle his loan? Remember, in a grade 12 exam, if you hear how long, for finance, it's always a log sum. So that's where we're heading to. But we need to start with the correct formula. So this person, Andrew, borrowed a lot of money and he's paying back each month. With every payment, it's getting less and less that he owes the bank. Therefore, I know this is present value. Okay, if you struggle, just go back to the video on present value to see exactly why we're choosing this. Now, I can see the present value is 200,000. They're telling me X is 6,000. They're telling me this is quarterly, so I, that I have, I'll say it's 0.0525 over 4. And then N is actually what I want to work out. So I don't know what N is, but I know it is quarterly. So whatever it is, I need to times it by 4 again. Now I can sub into the formula. So present value formula, just check your formula sheet, but it will be 200,000 is equal to, I know X, so 6,000, and then 1 minus 1 plus 0.0525 over 4, and then to the power minus 4n. Okay, all of that is over I. So 0.0525 over 4. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say this is 200,000 divided by 6,000. Now you can choose how many steps you want to put in here. And do you want to show them each step, type in each one separately in the calculator, or do you want to do as many in one step? I'm going to also now times over the bottom I, just so I can get rid of all these extreme fractions. My calculator simplifies this to 7 over 16, and on the other side, 1 minus, and then if I type this in the calculator, I get 1621 over 1600 to the power minus 4n. Now, I don't know if that looks better or more horrible to you than the fractions, but yeah, your choice if you want to simplify or not. Now I'm going to take over the 1, and then I'm going to go into log form. So if I say 7 over 16 minus 1, I'm just going to get minus 9 over 16 is equal to minus and then this bracket. Now, if you remember logs do not like minuses, but luckily both sides have a minus, so I can just cancel. Okay, now to go for log form. So minus 4n is equal to log, the base stays the base, and the other two numbers swap around. So 4n was the exponent, that now goes to the left, and then 9 over 16 goes to the log. And then if I type this in the calculator, my answer would be minus 44.123. No. Okay, and that's equal to minus 4n, and therefore n would be 11.03 years. Okay, now, depending on your teacher, sometimes they'll want you to go further than this. In this specific exam, the memo stops there, and they'll give you your 4 marks up until there. Now, according to your teacher, some teachers like to go further and say how many years and months, but this specific memo stops there, and the answer is just 11.03. So let's just check. Where would you get your 5 marks? Okay, so definitely for writing and subbing into the present value formula, and then for simplifying, so if you got there and there, you'll get your marks, then for writing the log correct, and then for telling them how many years. Okay, guys, that was the finance in this paper. I hope it wasn't too bad, but let's go on to calculus. Question 7, now we're getting to calculus. So determine the first derivative from first principles if fx is equal to minus 2x squared minus 1. Now, first step, just write down what they give you so you can see what is fx. So fx is equal to minus 2x squared minus 1. Now I need to figure out what is fx plus h. I just replace all the x's with an x plus h, and then I can just simplify. So minus 2, and then I'm foiling this. So x squared plus 2xh plus h squared, close bracket, minus 1. And then my final step there is just to times in. So minus 2x squared minus 4xh minus 2h squared minus 1. Now I can go and sub into the first principles formula. Okay, if I sub in, I can just write down that long one. So minus 2x squared minus 4xh minus 2h squared minus 1. And then subtract the original inner bracket, minus 2x squared minus 1, close bracket. All of that over h. Now remember, in this step, you know you have done it correct if everything that does not have an h cancels out. So this minus 2x squared is going to cancel with that one because I'm going to multiply the minus in. The ones are going to cancel. And then what I have left over is minus 4xh minus 2h squared over h. The next step, I now need to take out a common factor of h so that I can cancel the bottom one. And now that I see I can cancel the bottom one, I can just change the format and just say, okay, so therefore the derivative of f would be equal to minus 4x minus 2. I now sub in the 0, and therefore the answer for this whole sum would just be minus 4x. And for that, I would get 5 marks. So remember, you'll get a mark for doing your x plus h correctly and subbing everything else correct into that formula. Then for your simplifying and taking out a common factor, then for subbing in and losing the limit, and then for your final answer. Question 7.2. So now that we're done with first principles, we are going into the rules of differentiation. And these are normally fairly easy if you studied your rules. So please make sure that they don't catch you out with that. So the first question, determine the derivative if it is given that fx is equal to minus 2x cubed plus 3x squared. So that is one of the easiest ones that you will find in a paper. There's nothing wrong with that one. There's no brackets, no roots, no fractions. So I can just straight away start with the answer. So the derivative of f would be equal to, take the exponent, multiply with the coefficient. So minus 2 times 3, x 3 minus 1. So I'm writing all the steps just to remind you guys, but you can really skip just to the answer, and this would be minus 6x squared. For the next one, I'm going to say it's 3 times 2, x 2 minus 1. So the answer for that would be 6x. And that's it. That is the derivative. I get a mark for each of these. That's where the 2 marks come from. Question 7.2.2. Determine dy over dx if y is equal to 2x plus 1 over the root of 4x. First thing, I am going to rewrite this. So I'm not going to change the notation. I'm going to keep it y equals because I'm still simplifying. So I know the square root of 4 is just 2. So I'm going to rewrite that as 1 over 2. And now I'm left with a root x. So remember my exponent laws say I can split this root to say it is root 4 times root x. And now that x I need to take up and I need to take it out of the root. So I'm just going to say it's times minus a half. Okay, so times x to the power minus a half. Now I'm ready to differentiate. So then I can say dy over dx is going to be equal to 2 minus a half times a half is going to give me a quarter. And then x to the power negative a half minus 1. So this is going to be minus 3 over 2. Now, many schools say it's fine if you just leave it like that. I know the textbook also says that. But if your teacher wants it one step further, you will say it's 2 minus 1 over 4x to the power 3 over 2. And that would be your final answer. So where on earth do you get 4 marks? I get 4 marks for simplifying that, then for having that term correct, and the quarter. So this is what you can expect from any paper's calculus. You'll have a first principles question, and then 2 or 3 short rules of differentiation questions, where you just use the quick way and get the derivative. Question 7.3. The graph of y equals derivative of fx has a minimum turning point at 1 and minus 3. Determine the values of x for which f, the original, is concave down. Okay, guys, you'll see it only counts 2 marks. So this is actually a very easy question, but it's very deep into calculus. And there's many things that you need to understand before this question makes sense. Now, just to give you a very rough overview, if my normal calculus graph looks like this, okay, and my turning point is there and there, then if I extend these dotted lines a little bit, my derivative graph, if I can draw this in pink, would look like this. Okay, so if it cuts the x-axis, it would cut it directly at the same x value as the turning point. And where this graph has a turning point would be the point of inflection of the original graph. Okay, so many things to take in. But the thing that you need to know is if they tell me the minimum turning point of the parabola is that, then I know that correlates with the point of inflection. And the point of inflection is always where it goes from concave up to concave down. And to answer this question, I will tell them I know the x value of the point of inflection of the original is where x is equal to 1. Now, if I look at my sketch, why did I draw a happy parabola? Because they said the minimum value of the derivative. Okay, so the derivative is normally a parabola, and if it has a turning point, then I know it can't be a straight line, so it must be a parabola. And if it has a minimum, then it must be a happy face, because the turning point must be at its lowest point. Now, I know the x value there is 1, and therefore I cannot tell them where it's concave up or down. So if I look at the blue graph that I drew, the original fx graph, I know it's concave up at the happy face side. So I can highlight it's concave up on that side, and so it's concave down where it is a sad face parabola up there. So it always splits at the point of inflection, and I now just need to tell them is it on the left or the right. In this case, this graph is concave down, so I'm just going to say therefore concave down if x is smaller than 1. Okay, guys, it's just 2 marks, but I know it's very deep into calculus. If this feels over your head, just leave it. It's just 2 marks. Go get the other easy marks in this paper. There we go. That's the first question of calculus. Remember, calculus always has 3 questions. This is the first one. Let's look at the next one. The second question of calculus would normally have to do with functions. So you're either going to sketch a graph or they are going to give you a graph, and you need to interpret it. Question 8. So they give me fx is equal to x cubed plus 4x squared minus 7x minus 10. Write down the y-intercept of f. Now, very easy. Y-intercept, as always, as from grade 9. Make x equal to 0. If all my x's are 0, the only thing that remains is that y is equal to minus 10. Question 8.2. Show that 2 is a root of the equation. Now, in calculus and in any function, if something is a root, it means if I sub it into all the x's, then the answer will be 0. So let's test this. If it's a root, I know y must be 0. So I'm just going to leave a y there and then say 2 cubed plus 4 2 squared minus 7 times 2 and then minus 10. Now, if I just simplify a little bit, I know that is 8. I know 2 squared is 4, and 4 times 4 is 16. I know 7 times 2 is 14, so minus 14 minus 10, and that will give me exactly 0. So therefore, 2 is a root of the equation. But if they see you subbed it in and you got to 0, you'll get your marks. 8.3, hence, factorize completely. Now, there are many ways to factorize a cubic function. One is to just take the white AP calculator, but don't let your teachers know and catch you out. If you write it down correctly, they won't know you used your calculator and you will get full marks. But for the others of us who don't own a white calculator, we will have to do a method. Now, you can do synthetic division. There will be a video on the channel doing synthetic, or you can just do the brackets. Today, I'm going to show you the brackets for the sum. Now, if they tell me that 2 is a root, x minus 2 must then be one of the brackets. So the first thing I'm going to write down is 0 is equal to my equation, so x3 plus 4x squared minus 7x minus 10. And now I know already that the first bracket is going to be x minus 2. Now I must find the second bracket. Now in this specific method, I am going to take the x cubed, okay, and divide it by the normal x that's in my first bracket. And then I'm going to write what is left. So if I say x cubed divided by x, I get x squared in that first bracket. Now I'm going to do the same with the 2 and the 10. And I know if I take minus 10 divided by minus 2, I'm going to get a plus 5. Now, I don't know what the middle term should be, so I'm just going to put a plus kx. Now, you can make it an m or a k or an n, doesn't matter. Now, the next step is I need to FOIL out these two brackets that I have. So if I FOIL this out, let me just write it there. This is going to be x cubed. So if I say FOIL out, I mean I'm going to take this x and multiply it by all 3, and then take the minus 2 and multiply it by all 3. So x cubed plus kx squared plus 5x, and then I'm going to take the minus 2, so minus 2x squared minus 2kx, and then minus 10. And now the magic of this method happens is I can now choose if I want to work with x squared or just x. Let's go for x squared in this case. So in my original equation, it was 4x squared, and in this FOILed out version, I have a kx squared and a minus 2x squared. Now, if I were to simplify, those two parts need to be exactly the same. So what I mean with that is I can now say 4x squared from the top must be equal to kx squared minus 2x squared. I can take over the 2x squared to the other side, so 6x squared is equal to kx squared, and therefore 6 is equal to k. Now that I know that, I can go and rewrite my brackets and say from that step there, therefore 0 is equal to x minus 2, then x squared plus 6x plus 5 is my second bracket. And now I can just factorize that bracket. So I know the first one is already factorized, x minus 2, and then this is just a trinomial, which is going to be x plus 5, x plus 1. And therefore, my x-intercepts will be x equals to 2, or x equals to minus 5, or x equals to minus 1. Question 8.4, if it is further given that the coordinates of the turning points are approximately that coordinate and that coordinate, draw the sketch of f and label the intercepts and the turning points. Now, if I am ever asked to draw a sketch for calculus, I am going to do my 5 points. So the first point is the shape. I am going to check what is in front of x cubed. In this case, my a value is a positive 1, and that means my graph is going to be an increasing function. How do I know the difference between increasing and decreasing? Increasing starts going up and it ends going up. So it starts increasing and it ends increasing. Then I know a is positive. Where if it's negative, it starts to decrease and it goes up in the middle, but then down at the end again. So in this case, a is not negative, so I know it's not that one. Then my y-intercept, we said that was minus 10. X-intercepts is what we just got, so that will be a 2, a minus 5, and a minus 1. And then the turning points they gave me in the question, so 0.7, minus 12.6, and the other one, minus 3.4, and 20.8. So if they didn't give it to me, I would have to take the derivative and make the derivative equal to 0 to find the x values, and then sub that into the original to get the y values. But in this case, that was not necessary. Now I can just go and plot all the points that they tell me. So they tell me the y-intercept is minus 10. They tell me the x-intercepts will be at 2, at minus 1, and at 5. My turning points, and now I just need to be very accurate, it's going to be at 0.7 and minus 12, so it's there somewhere. And because it's a turning point and I know the shape, I'm already going to make a little bucky there, okay, so that I know it's going to turn. And for the other one at minus 3.4 and 20.8. So that one is going to be there somewhere, and I can just do a little curve again. And now I can just connect, and that would be my sketch. So I'm just connecting through the x value and then to the turning point, and then it goes up again. Okay, so this is not a perfect curve, but if they can see my points are exactly where they should be, then they don't care too much if it's now a curve or if it has sharp edges. Try your best to make it look curvy. And there we go. If I just fill in all the details that's not already on the axes, then I will get full marks for that graph. So 3 marks because they gave you everything and they asked you everything already in previous questions. Question 8.5. So this is now where they go for these questions where they try to trick you. But let's decipher them, and hopefully it won't be that difficult. So the first one, where is the derivative negative? Now remember from class, the derivative is just another way to say gradient, and when a gradient is negative, a graph decreases. So I can clearly see from my sketch, it decreases between the two turning points. So to answer the question, where will the derivative be negative? When x lies between the two x values of my turning points, so minus 3.4 and 0.7. And decreasing and increasing is never included. So I don't need to put a little line under the smaller than signs because it can't be included if it's increasing and decreasing. Okay, the next question. Use your graph and determine where the gradient of the tangent would be a minimum. Okay, so the gradient of the tangent is the derivative. And the derivative has a minimum at the point of inflection. So the double derivative equal to 0. Remember that. So the gradient of the tangent is a minimum at the point of inflection. So that's all I need to work out for them. So they haven't even asked me to work out the derivative, but now I need to work out the double derivative. So let's start with the first derivative, and that would just be 3x squared plus 8x minus 7, and therefore the double derivative would be equal to 6x plus 8. And if I put that equal to 0, I can see x would be minus 8 over 6, or also equal to minus 4 over 3. Perfect. Use your graph to determine the x value for the point of inflection. So the x value is just minus 4 over 3. Question 8.5.3, where is the derivative times the double derivative smaller or equal to 0? Now, this is extremely confusing. So you have two choices. You must either just think what it implies, or you must then draw both of those graphs on your graph. I would not go for that unless you are a genius with calculus. Otherwise, you can make too many mistakes. But let's interpret what's going on here. So firstly, they want a smaller than 0. So I know that's going to be a plus and a plus, or a minus and a minus. Okay, the first derivative, if it is a plus, remember the first derivative is my gradient. So if that's a plus, then my graph is increasing. And if it's a minus, then the graph is decreasing. The double derivative tells me if something is concave up or concave down. So, sorry guys, I know this is confusing, but let's do this question. So I'm looking for a place where the graph is increasing when the graph is concave up, if I'm looking for plus plus. So I'm looking for something like this on the happy parabola. So that would be this part from the turning point to the end of the graph, because it's concave up and it is increasing. The other scenario that would satisfy the equation is if it is decreasing when the graph is concave down. So decreasing when it's concave down, and that would happen for this part when it is between the turning point and the point of inflection. So how do I write that in algebra? I can just say x lies between minus 3.4 and the point of inflection that we got as minus 4 over 3, or when x is greater than 0.7. Okay, I know that's a very complicated question, so practice it, but if you feel it's a lost case, just move on. There's much easier marks in the paper. The final question in calculus is normally a word sum or a picture, but you will notice it from the word maximum or minimum, always. And if I have a maximum or minimum question, I just need to get a derivative and make it equal to 0. So let's analyze question 9. A wire 12 meters long is cut into two pieces, one part bent to form an equilateral triangle and the other to form a square. A side of the triangle has a length of 2x meters. Okay, so I'm going to do pictures. So an equilateral triangle, just if all three sides are the same, and they're telling me the side is 2x. Okay, so if it's equilateral, then all of them are 2x, and therefore I know this one was 6x. And then they also tell me there's a square. Now, square is always equal in length, and then if I draw a square in this case, it would have to be 12 minus 6x, but divided by 4 for each side. So there's no simple way to write that, but that would be the length of each side. So let's see what question 1 would be. Write down the length of a side of the square in terms of x. Okay, perfect. So I did that, but let me just repeat again what I did. So I found that the equilateral triangle has 3 sides, all of them are the same, and the question tells me each one is 2x. So therefore, if I put them together, I used 6x meters of wire to do the triangle. Therefore, what's left is 12 minus 6x. Now remember, I can't assume that x is 1 and just say, okay, it's 12 minus 6, so there's 6 left. You must use the x, because x might as well be a half or 3/4 or something else, and then it won't just be 6 meters. So I said 12 minus 6x is what's left. I am bending that into a square, so that's why I divided by 4. So the answer, 12 minus 6x all over 4. Now, question 9.2. If the square is now used as the base of a rectangular prism with a height of 4x meters, determine the maximum volume of this rectangular prism. I don't know who's bored enough to think of these questions. Wow, they get creative. But this one doesn't seem too difficult. So let's just go and try our best to draw a 3D shape and then see what is going on here. Okay, so that's my drawing for a rectangular prism. I know the base of that rectangle we worked with, where each side is 12 minus 6x over 4. They're telling me the height is 4x meters. I don't know what the x is, but I just know that's what they told me. So now I just need to go for the volume of the prism. So I can say volume is equal to length times breadth times height. And in this case, the length and breadth would be the same. So it's going to be 12 minus 6x over 4 times 12 minus 6x over 4, and then times the height, which is 4x. That is the volume. And now to get the maximum volume, I need to get the derivative of that whole thing and make it equal to 0. But this looks way too tricky to do that now. So I first need to simplify a lot to do that. Now I can see that 12 minus 6, I can take out a common factor of 2 there. So remember, I am aiming to get rid of fractions. I hate fractions. So if I take out a 2 there, this will be 6 minus 3x over 4. The same with this one, 2, and then 6 minus 3x over 4, and then times 4x. Now I can cancel out a little bit. So that 2, I can cancel with that 4, and there's a 2 left. And that 2, I'm simply going to cancel with this one. And then that 4, I'm going to cancel with this one. So perfect, my fractions are gone. Now I can just multiply into the bracket and get the derivative. So in this case, I have 2 brackets there, and I just need to FOIL them, but I need to remember there's an x at the back. So I'm first going to FOIL, and then just say, okay, so this is 36, and then 6 times 3 gives me minus 18x, and then plus 9x squared. Okay, great. Now I can simplify that and multiply the xn. So the simplified form of volume would then be 36x minus 36x times x, so minus 36x squared, and then plus 9x cubed. Okay, great, that's my volume formula. Now I can get the derivative of that and then make that equal to 0. So there's many notations you can follow, but an acceptable one is just to say, okay, so volume's derivative would be 36 minus 72x plus 27x squared. I want to make that equal to 0, and then that's a trinomial, which I can now solve. Now I can see all of those numbers look quite familiar, and I think I can divide all of them by 9. So the x squared I'm going to do first. That is going to be 3x squared minus 8x and then plus 4 equals to 0. Now I just need to see how on earth am I going to get an 8 with a 3 and a 4. And I think I'm going to say it is 3x times 2. That gives me a 6. And then for the other one, I know this has to be a 2 and this needs to be an x. So now I have a 2x and a 6x, and if I give both of them a minus, then it's going to give me the minus 8. So perfect. My x values will then be x is equal to 2 over 3 or x is equal to 2. Now I need to see, will both of them be acceptable in this equation? So remember, in question 9.1, we said the side of a square is going to be 12 minus 6x over 4. If I do that and I sub in the 2, so 12 minus 6 times 2 over 4, I am going to get that side of the square is 0, and then therefore this question doesn't exist. So that can never happen if you have a word sum. Therefore, just draw a line through the equal sign and say not applicable. So remember, that means 2 is an answer for the trinomial. It's just not an answer in this story. Now I need to see if I answered the question. The question said, determine the maximum volume of this prism. I can't say the maximum is 2 over 3. I need to sub in the 2 over 3 into my original volume formula just before I got the derivative. So if I sub it in there, then I will be able to see what the maximum volume is. So I'm just going to say, therefore, max volume would be equal to 36 times 2 over 3 minus 36 2 over 3 squared, and then plus 9 times 2 over 3 cubed. Okay, let me just take the na away and put the na right there. And then I can just type that in the calculator and tell them that the answer is 32 over 3, also equal to 10.67 meters. Okay, guys, so this wasn't a really bad word sum. I have seen much worse, but I know many schools don't even get there in the syllabus, and then you're on your own with these questions. You are welcome to go and watch the video on these word sums. I will do as many as I can so you can get a feel for this. Question 10 is now probability. So firstly, grade 11 probability. A group of people participated in a trial to test a new headache pill. 50% of participants received a headache pill and 50% of participants received a sugar pill, okay, otherwise known as a placebo. 2/5 of the group who received headache pills were not cured, while 3 over 10 of the group receiving sugar pills were cured. Okay, so that psychologically, that is extremely interesting, but this is a math paper, not psychology. Represent the given information on a tree diagram. Indicate on your diagram the probability associated with each branch as well as the outcomes. Okay, perfect. So I already started with my tree diagram. So let me just explain how I know it splits in 2 and then in 2. So firstly, I need to compensate for those who got headache pills. Okay, so I'm going to make that the top branch, and then those who got sugar pills, the bottom branch. Now, I know this is 50%, but I'm just going to go fractions for today. So a half and a half. Then I'm going to talk about how many were cured in each one and how many were not cured when they're taking the pills. Now, if they tell me 2/5 of the group of headache pills were not cured, I can say that is 2 over 5. And then the top one must be the remainder. So that will be 3 over 5. Something very important. This must always add up to one whole. And it's 5 over 5, so I know I'm correct. As with this will add up to 2 over 2, so that is also correct. Now with the bottom one, if they say 3/10 were cured, I can say that's 3 over 10, and this then must be 7 over 10. Okay, now I'm still not getting full marks because they told me, indicate on your diagram the probability associated with each branch as well as the outcomes. Okay, so if I do the outcomes, I must say this is HC, so headache cured, headache not cured. And then this one, sugar pill cured, and then sugar pill not cured. And then that would give me 3 marks. I'll get a mark if this is correct, and if I showed my outcomes. For the next question, determine the probability that a person chosen at random from the group will not be cured. Okay, so I'm only interested in HNC and SNC. Now remember from tree diagrams, I'm not just allowed to say, okay, it's the 2 over 5 and the 7 over 10. It doesn't work like that. I need to take it from the start of the tree diagram. So to get to HNC, I need to multiply everything to get there. And then for this one, I need to multiply both branches to get there. Now, how this would look in algebra is, so I'm just going to say this is a half times 2 over 5, and then plus a half times 7 over 10. So if I type that in my calculator, I just get 11 over 20. And that is the answer to the question. So 11 of the 20 people would not be cured, or 55%. They did not tell me exactly if they wanted fractions or percentages, so they'll mark each one correct. Question 10.2. So we're still in grade 11 probability, but now it's very theory-based. So let's see how bad this can get, or maybe this is an easy one. 3 events, A, B, and C, are considered. Are events A and B mutually exclusive? Support your answer with the necessary calculations. Now, something is mutually exclusive if the circles do not overlap, if this is A and that is B. Okay. Another way to see this is if P, A, and B is equal to 0. So meaning there's nothing that overlaps in the circles. So that's what I'm going to look for, but they don't make it easy for me. I'll have to use a formula. to get that. So the formula is on your formula sheet, luckily, so you can just sub in. And the formula says PA or B, so 13 over 20, is equal to P of A plus P of B minus PA and B. Okay, so like I said, it's on your formula sheet. Now I can just figure this sum out and then see if the answer is 0, it is mutually exclusive, or not. So I know this is going to be 13 over 20. Then 2 over 5, if I take the LCD as 20, I need to multiply by 4, so this is 8 over 20. And then the other one I need to multiply by 5, so minus 5 over 20. And that is actually going to be 0, so this is mutually exclusive. Question 10.10.2, determine the probability of only C if they give me all of that. So that is quite a lot. Okay, I'm firstly just going to work with the third set of info that they give me, and they told me the probability of B and C is equal to the probability of A and C. Now, that they actually gave me, so I can just replace it with a 2 over 5, and then there's a 2 in front. This is an equation, so I'm just going to move it that side and say divided by 2, and then I can say, okay, that's a fifth. How does this help me? Now I can draw 3 circles, one for A, one for B, and one for C, and then sub in what they give me to work out the answer. So those are my 3 circles. How do I know C is in the middle and not B? Because I don't have any place where they say A and B and A or B. So therefore I know C correlates with A and B, so it must be in the middle. Now they tell me A and C is 2 over 5, so I can put a 2 over 5 there. We just worked out that B and C is 1 over 5. Okay, so that goes there. And now we need to figure out A or C. So what does that mean? So the question was to figure out what is only C. So remember, all the things from the top still applies. So I can then see that A or C was 7 over 10. Okay, they told me there. Okay, now I can take the 7 over 10, and I know that must be equal to the entire circle A plus the entire circle C, but I'm not allowed to use the 2 over 5 twice. Okay, now if I look at the very top, the A circle is just 2 over 5, so that means all of it is also in that part that's overlapping with C. Okay, great. So now I can say if the A and the C circle is 7 over 10, I can then minus a 0, I can minus a 2 over 5, and I can minus a 1 over 5. And then what would be left is this x value there. And if I do all of that, I can see it is 7 over 10 minus 4 over 10 minus 2 over 10. And that is then just 1 over 10. And that is the answer they're looking for. So my x value is 1 over 10. I know that was quite tricky, but if you draw a little Venn diagram, it will always help you get closer to the answer. Question 3, determine the probability that the events A, B, or C do not take place. So now, if this is a Venn diagram, remember there's always a block around a Venn diagram, and they are interested in any number that would be outside the circles, but still inside the block. Now, I have a problem because there's still one space that I don't know what needs to go there in only B. So that's what I'm going to work out first. Now, I know the entire B circle must be equal to a quarter because they told me in the opening sentence of this question. So I can now just say, but if the entire B circle is a quarter, then what is left, I will get if I subtract 1 over 5, so this part that overlaps with C. And that would then be 5 over 20 minus 4 over 20, so that would be equal to 1 over 20. And then to answer the question that they are actually asking me, I just need to say 1 minus all of the other fractions I can see. So minus 2 over 5, minus 1 over 10, minus 1 over 5, minus 1 over 20. And if I type that in my calculator, I will get the part that's in the block, but not in any of the circles. And the answer, if my math is correct, is 5 over 20. Is the chance that not A, not B, and not C will happen. The last question of this paper, 10.3, this is now the counting principles or the grade 12 probability. 7 friends, 4 boys and 3 girls, want to stand in a straight line next to each other to take a photo. In how many ways can 3 girls stand next to each other in the photo? Okay, so they are telling me the girls are forming a group, but not the boys. So the boys can stand anywhere. So remember, if they talk about groups, I'm going to say a group of girls, so 3 factorial, because each one of them can switch sides and places or whatever. And then there's 4 boys left, but I always say this is how many are left plus how many groups are there in the question. So this would be 3 factorial, 5 factorial. They just asked me how many ways, and this number is small enough to actually just type in your calculator and get the answer. My calculator tells me this is 720 different ways. Now, in the next question, in the next photo, determine the probability that Selwyn, a boy, and Lindiwe, a girl, will not stand next to each other. So the psychologist in me is wondering what on earth happened between those two, that they want to avoid each other. But once again, this is a math paper, so let's not go there. Okay, with questions like this, when they explicitly say something will not happen, you are allowed to be a bit of a rebel and work out what's the chance of exactly that happening, and then take it away from the total. Yeah, so that's what we're going to do in this question. So we want to know what's the chance of those two standing together. So once again, they form a group, so 2 factorial, and then there's 5 people left over. So like I always say, if there's a group, I'm going to say the group, give it a factorial, and then all of those left plus how many groups there are, factorial. Now, this would then give me 2 factorial, 6 factorial, and I can just on the calculator just figure out what that is, and then say all of the options minus that one will give me the answer to their question. So 2 factorial times 6 factorial would be 1440 is the chances of them standing next to each other. But now I can, to answer the question, I can say, okay, but I know there were 7 people. So 7 factorial minus 1440 would give me the answer. So let's just first see what is 7 factorial. So my calculator tells me 7 factorial is 5040. And I then just take away all of the options where they do stand next to each other, and then I can answer their question. So there are 3,600 different photos that they can take where Selwyn and Lindiwe don't need to stand next to each other for some reason. So how's the exam? How did it go? Please let me know what your mark was out of 150.
If this video helped you, please like and subscribe.
JMath.